Oregon fans, what's going on? We're back like we never left. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Just in case you're new here, I'm your host, Max Torres, and we got a big episode for you in store today. I tried to tell you guys the run was coming. If you've been listening to the Ducks Dish podcast, if you've been reading my stuff over on Ducks Digest, I was trying to tell you that the momentum was building for Oregon and that they were poised to go on a run on the recruiting trail. And we have a big commitment to get into today as 4-star Missouri defensive line commit Tionne Gray has flipped his commitment from the Missouri Tigers to the Oregon Ducks in a massive win for Dan Lanning and company on the recruiting trail. This comes just a day after the Ducks landed a commitment from in-state offensive tackle Trent Ferguson out of West Salem High School, and the Ducks are really heating up on the recruiting trail. So kind of what I'm hoping to do on this episode of the pod. Not exactly sure how long it's going to go just yet. We're live on YouTube, by the way, as well as Twitter. YouTube, you can find us at Oregon Football Max Torres, and Twitter, you can find me at mtorres sports. If you guys are here in the live stream, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to leave me a comment or go in the live chat. Let me know your thoughts on Oregon's latest commitment, Tionne Gray, and where the Ducks are at right now in the 2024 recruiting class, because they are red hot. Tionne Gray did have a little bit of a note that he included on with his commitment. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. I'll read that, and then we're going to break down some film and throw some highlights on the screen. So don't go anywhere just yet. I'll get this up here, and then we'll hop into it. All right, here we go. Let me share my screen. All right, here we are. Okay, so Tionne Gray, he said, quote, "First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the Mizzou football family. Coach Drink, Coach Davis, and the entire staff have been great throughout this entire process. After careful consideration, I've decided to decommit from the University of Missouri. This is not a decision that I take lightly. However, I must make the best decision for my life and football future. I have decided to commit to the University of Oregon. I look forward to Saturdays in Eugene. #Go Ducks." So that's the latest big win for the Ducks on the recruiting trail, with Tionne Gray hopping into the fold, a former Missouri commit. And I think that when you are breaking down this commitment, I feel like there's layers to it, right? Because this is an in-state guy from the state of Missouri, and he was committed to the Tigers. So it's not easy to go into a state. And Missouri, I think, is a school that has recruited pretty well in recent years under Eli Drinkowitz. And honestly, it's a state that has produced some pretty darn good talent. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and throw on some highlights here so you guys can see Oregon's newest commit here in action. So I got the highlights up here, and we're going to break down this game. I think some of the things that really stand out about Tionne Gray when you throw on the film is if you guys have watched his film, before just now, he has quite a few highlights on the offense, dominating guys as an offensive tackle. I mean, this is a big dude, right? He's listed on 247 Sports at 6'6", 295 pounds. So this is back-to-back days that the Ducks have added some serious size in the trenches, with Trent Ferguson, the 2024 offensive tackle commit, measuring at 6'7", 300 pounds. So Dan Lanning is absolutely prioritizing the trenches, and this is another huge recruit for the Ducks. And I think, talking a little bit more about Tionne here, I think one thing that stands out to him, talked about his versatility, playing a lot of really good offense snaps at offensive line. I think that it speaks to his athleticism too. I think a lot of times when you have guys that are, big time recruits, sometimes they tend to specialize on just one side of the ball. That's not the case here. Gray's head coach is making sure to get everything he can out of him. And I think that it says a lot about his durability and his motor, that he's able to star on both sides of the ball. And I think one thing that stands out, not to be critical or, to knock on a guy, but I feel like when I compare the tape of Trent Ferguson to Tionne Gray, I think Gray moves his frame a lot better than Ferguson. But at the same time, Ferguson's only played 4 games of high school football, so he's literally as raw of a prospect as you can possibly. Sorry about that, guys. I'm having some technical deals here, so I'm going to try to adjust on the fly, but it looks like we're back to my microphone. I'm literally not touching it, but my computer says that I'm unplugging it. So hopefully that's okay. Let me know in the comments if you guys are having trouble hearing me, but I think we should be all right. So yeah, Gray is moving his frame really, really well. And I think you also see a tremendous amount of power that comes with that 6'6", 295-pound frame. This is a guy who excels in the trenches and is an absolute dog. I mean, you see him using that straight arm, and he does a really good job taking on double teams. All right, I'm just gonna switch my mic over to my laptop because my other one is not cooperating. So sorry about that. All right, so I'm back on the mic. It's just my laptop, so sorry about that. Hopefully the mic hangs in there for me. But now I can hopefully just get back to this analysis here. So talking about just the athleticism, the strength, the motor that he has. And I also think another thing that's pretty impressive with Gray is his pad level that he plays with and the leverage that he plays with, because if you're looking at a guy that's this big, he's just naturally probably going to have a tendency to play pretty high and, to keep a high pad level. So the fact that he's able to play with the technique that he does, I think that speaks a lot to his potential along the defensive line. And then just to talk a little bit more about how it's significant this commitment is for Oregon, the defensive line play has not met the standard that it's needed to at Oregon. I mean, that's just the cold, hard truth. I think that they've had a good defensive line, but it hasn't been where they need it to be. They've had a couple guys here and there, right? You had KT a couple years ago. You had Brandon Dorless and DJ Johnson last year, Casey Rogers. So you have some pretty quality pieces. I think Brandon Dorless is probably the guy with the most upside there on that defensive line. And then you bring in Jordan Birch from South Carolina, and that just makes the whole defensive line that much more dangerous, right? I think that you have a bunch of returning pieces in 2023, right, that you feel really good about. Some of those guys that I mentioned, you got Taki Taimani, and then you also have Keon Ware-Hudson are a couple pieces that you got to mention. But a really veteran group in 2023 also lends itself to a group that's going to see some shakeup heading into the 2024 season. So even though the Ducks just absolutely attacked the defensive line position in 2023, they can't be complacent with that. They're going to need to keep loading up on dudes and some huge bodies along that defensive line. I think that when I was looking at Tionne Gray and kind of looking at his makeup as a player, I was thinking a little bit about Jason Jones. If you remember Jason Jones, he was a former defensive lineman for Oregon that is originally from the state of Alabama, and I looked him up on the Auburn roster because he transferred now, right? He's listed on the Auburn roster at 6'6", 339. So that's not exactly where Tionne Gray is at, but that's the kind of dude that Oregon is getting here. And 6'6", 295, you just don't find that out west. You just don't. I mean, sometimes you can kind of, get lucky and find some of those body types out here. But on the defensive line, it's way more confident, way more common on the offensive line, right? Oregon got Amari Washington in the past cycle out of Arizona. He's a big defensive tackle, and he's kind of like, I want to say 6'4", 290. I'm going to look him up right now because that's the only other guy that I can think of out west. You have Amari Washington at 6'4", 295. He's a big-time guy for Oregon in the 23 class out of Arizona, Chandler High School, where the Ducks got Johnny Johnson. And that's also the former school of Dylan Raiola, but he's transferred to Pinnacle. And then the Ducks also got Tavita Pomee out of the state of Utah. So he's a big dude too, 6'3", 315. But I think that going into the state of Missouri, it's a state that has a lot of potential. So we'll talk about some of the other guys that Oregon's recruiting in Missouri in just a second. But let's talk about what this commitment means for Oregon's 2024 class. like I said, a lot of momentum right now for Oregon. 3 commits here in less than a week for Oregon in the 2024 class, with Aaron Flowers committing to Oregon last Friday. He's a big-time safety out of Texas, Forney, Texas, to be specific. And he just got invited to the Adidas All-American Bowl today. So that just tells you the caliber of the guys that Oregon's bringing in right now, the caliber of the guys that Chris Hampton, the new safeties coach from Tulane, is bringing to Oregon. And then you got Trent Ferguson yesterday. Kind of seems like more of a project guy, but clearly the staff sees a lot of upside there if they're taking him after just playing 4 high school games. They're seeing a lot of potential there as a guy with a basketball background. And then again, today you got Tionne Gray. So Oregon's 2024 class now ranks 7th in the entire country. This according to the 247 Sports rankings. And then an update in the rankings, it looks like, as Aaron Flowers is now the number 2 highest rated commit, the 2nd highest rated commit in Oregon's class, coming in as a 4-star at 0.9486. I don't know if 247 did a recent rankings update, but I don't think that that's the rating that he had when he committed. I could be wrong though. But yeah, Oregon's red hot, 7th in the country, number 1 class in the Pac-12, and they only have 8 commits right now, which is, again, speaking to the quality of the guys that Oregon's getting. I mean, almost every guy in Oregon's 2024 recruiting class is a 4-star, the only 3-star being Trent Ferguson. But Tionne Gray, I didn't even say where he was from, but I did say it was from Missouri. So he's coming out of St. Louis, Missouri, out of Hazelwood Central. And this is big because Oregon now has 2 pieces along their defensive front, along that front 7 in the 2024 recruiting class, alongside Jackson Jones, the 4-star edge rusher out of Yuma Catholic in Arizona. So this is, you're getting some good pieces together. And like I said, some really solid momentum in the 2024 recruiting class. Looking at some other guys that are involved here for Oregon, especially on defense. Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Oregon's going after some serious talent along the edge, with a bunch of those guys slated to come to Oregon for the spring game at the end of the month. I'm going to bring up some of them here so I can reference them. But, you're looking at Elijah Rushing. He's probably the biggest name, one of the biggest names, I should say, that's expected on campus for the spring game for Oregon. Number 1 edge rusher in the country out of Tucson, Arizona, Sal Point Catholic. That's a guy that Oregon's put a tremendous amount of work in this class. Tosh Lapoy, Dan Lanning are some of the biggest reasons that Oregon is surging right now for Elijah Rushing. I believe he's starting to set his official visit schedule, and Oregon is going to get one of those trips. So the Ducks are in an awesome spot with him heading into the spring game. And then you also have Colin Simmons out of Duncanville, Texas. He's another highly rated edge guy. He's expected on campus for the Oregon spring game as well. So more big-time talent that's going to be making their way out. Jordan Ross out of Birmingham, Alabama, another high 4-star edge rusher. There's been some chatter about him coming out to campus, so keep an eye out on him. And then you also have Oregon in the mix for Williams Nawarni, who's out of Lee's Summit, Missouri. That's closer to the Kansas City area, but keep an eye on him. And then some other big names to watch. You got Aiden Breland out of Mater Dei in Santa Ana, California, national powerhouse program, right? And then you also have Nigel Smith out of Melissa, Texas. So those are some other names to keep an eye on. You also have Joseph Jonah Ajonye out of Conroe, Texas at Oak Ridge High School. He's teammates with Justin Williams, a 2024 linebacker that Oregon's going after. So those are just kind of some notes for Oregon as far as the defensive picture in 2024, some of the other defensive linemen that Oregon's going after, because Tionne Gray is a true interior kind of a guy, right? He's someone that you don't probably see moving around too much as far as getting out wide to the edge. At least I don't really see that on the tape. I don't see the versatility to that degree. I don't see the quickness and agility to being at that degree. But this is another huge body that Oregon needs more of in the trenches. They did bring Terence Green in. He's another huge body out of Texas, 6'5", 265 pounds, 275 pounds, I want to say. So even though they already got all that size in 2023, they're not getting complacent by any means. And I feel like the offensive line recruiting at Oregon has already been at the mark that it's needed to be to get this program where it wants to go. Where it's been lacking is the defensive line. They've had some pretty good stints of being able to defend the run, but they've still really struggled to get after the passer. And I think that when we're having this conversation about pass rushers, you're not just looking at the edge, right? You need to get guys on the interior. You need to get guys that are they have a little bit of that Aaron Donald in them that can, generate some push from the interior, generate some pressure from the interior. Casey Rogers did that at some points last year. Brandon Dorless did that at some points last year. So now you're bringing in more guys that are hopefully going to be able to do that. I think when Tionne Gray gets to Oregon, like I said, that room's going to have a lot of new faces there. So I think that, he's not someone that's just so unbelievably talented that you maybe see him playing right away. Like starting right away. I don't think that's the situation necessarily with Gray, but because of the skill set that he has, he's physically ready for the college level, clearly at this point. It's going to be maybe a question more so of, how does he adjust to the speed of the college game? Is his technique where Tony Tuioti wants it to be in order to be confident enough to put him out there as a true freshman? But I think he's someone that can definitely get in the mix right away at Oregon. And this is a commitment that you're happy to get too. Because like I said, there's a lot of talent in the state of Missouri, and Oregon is also involved with a couple of those guys there. And then also worth noting, Missouri is Lanning's home state, right? So he's going to have probably a little bit of extra pull here and there with some of these guys in the state of Missouri. And I'm going to bring up some of these guys so I can tell you about them. You have so many big-time guys that we talked about. Williams Nwarni, the big-time defensive lineman. Ryan Wingo out of St. Louis University High School. He's not someone that Oregon's necessarily in the mix for, but the guys that Oregon is in the mix for is Jeremiah McClellan. He's a 4-star wide receiver out of Christian Brothers College, which is really big. He has Oregon as a top school. He made it out to Oregon this winter, maybe spring, but I know he was on campus recently for Oregon. We're gonna have plenty of notes on Oregon wide receiver recruiting before too long here later on in the episode. So make sure that you stick around for that. But yeah, I think I've hit on most of my big points as far as Tionne Gray's commitment, talking a lot about, where Oregon's at, where they go from here, and kind of what he brings to the fold here as a big time recruit. So that's kind of what I have on Tionne Gray, but we're getting a couple of comments here. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can hop into some of these here. It looks like some people are saying that they hear me. My mic's doing all right. So shout out. Eric's saying, I think Lanning and company will eventually sign Oregon's highest ranked class. Crystal Ball got us to 6 in 2021, so top 5. Yeah, I've been saying for a while that top 5 is the mark that Oregon needs to be shooting for. I remember once Oregon got through signing day for the 2023 class, I was texting a source at Oregon, and I think I've said it before, but he was saying that he thinks that Oregon's 2024 class could go down as the best class in history, and all the pieces are certainly there, right? You have the Pac-12 Recruiter of the Year and Demetris Martin from a cycle ago. You got Dan Lin, you got Tosh Lapoy, some very heavy hitters on the recruiting trail, and Junior Adams, we got to talk about him. He's turning into a heavy hitter on the recruiting trail as well. So there's plenty of guys that Oregon's in the running for. I did a next 5 to commit story after Aaron Flowers committed. I didn't list either of these guys, so I can't give myself a pat on the back for that just yet. But there's a number of guys over on that story on ducksdigest.com. That's a free read. Go give that a read if you haven't already. Question here from Eric. How are we looking for Justin Williams and Brandon Baker? Justin Williams, like I mentioned, he's a big-time linebacker out of the state of Texas. I thought that Oregon was in a really good spot with him during the fall, and I was maybe even expecting a commitment at some point. But then some pretty big schools got involved, and now he's working from a top 6 that's pretty loaded. I think A&M, TCU, and Texas are in the picture there, and then you also have Alabama and Ohio State. So if Oregon's able to schools like that, if Oregon's able to get him back on campus, I think they have a good shot. I think that Dylan Williams is probably the linebacker I feel the most confident about for Oregon right now. He's a really high 4-star guy at a Long Beach Poly just up the road from me. He's been to Oregon numerous times. He's a former USC commit, but I know Oregon's done a lot of really good work there. They've stayed involved. You got schools like Miami, Michigan, and then you also have Texas in the running for Dylan Williams. So I think that he's a guy to watch for sure. And then Brandon Baker, he's a big time guy out of modern day, right? Nation's #1 offensive tackle. Had another recent update on ducksdigest.com with him. So go give that a read. I don't mean to be plugging it so much, but I'm just trying to say if it's there, go read it. It's a free read. That one is. He's going to be back on campus for the spring game. And that's a priority target for new offensive line coach Alik Terry, who is, obviously a pretty young coach. Got his first commit in the fold with Trent Ferguson since returning to Oregon. But when I talked to Brandon Baker, kind of the tone of the interview was that Clem's departure, Coach Vianney's departure to Stanford, those moves kind of reset the recruitment a little bit. That's not to say that Oregon's in a bad spot at all, but I think it did kind of create a little bit of an opening for some of those other schools to get in the mix. He was just at Georgia recently. He was at Nebraska recently, made it out to Florida State recently. So that's a guy that is going everywhere, all over the country right now. But, there's family ties for Baker at Oregon, and Alik Terry has made him a priority. So I think that that's definitely someone that Oregon could potentially add here in the 2024 class. But plenty of time left in that recruitment. I don't think that there's a decision coming anytime soon. But I think he did tell me he's going to be cutting his list down soon, so keep an eye out for that. All right. Nick says, I'm hearing some more guys are going to commit to the Ducks this month. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, let's see. You got Luke Moga as a guy to keep an eye on. He set his commitment date for April 28th. He's expected back on campus in Eugene later this month. He's the 2024 quarterback out of Phoenix, Arizona, Sunny Slope High School. A dude with truly elite athleticism for a quarterback. Anyone who can run the 100 meters in under 11 and track, you're looking at a pretty good time. I think I've heard he could run as fast as a 10.5 even. I mean, to put that into context, Roderick Pleasant held the California State record, still holds it. He's an Oregon cornerback signee. He set that in a time of 10.14, I think, 10.16. I think that's huge. So I think that Luke Moga is the guy that you have to watch right now for Oregon. He's seen his recruiting stock just absolutely take off, and he's absolutely a name to watch for the Ducks here in 2024. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. Oregon is picking up some steam in the 2024 class, and I'm specifically talking about the wide receiver position. We're going to talk about Aaron Butler. Aaron Butler is a big-time wide receiver talent out of Calabasas High School. This is a school that has produced a number of really talented wideouts and a number of really talented players in recent years. I think Oregon fans will be familiar with Calabasas because it's where they found Micah Pittman in a recent recruiting class. He's obviously doing his thing at Florida State now, but he went to Calabasas. You also have Johnny Wilson, who's also at Florida State with Micah Pittman. He went to Calabasas. And then you also have to look at Alabama's Jermaine Burton. He's another guy out of Calabasas. So this is a school that has really become known for wide receiver talent. And Aaron Butler was on campus this past weekend in Eugene for a visit. And, this is a big guy that you have to watch for in Oregon's 2024, recruiting targets, because he spoke really highly of Oregon when I last spoke with him. But it sounds like, Oregon's in a really good spot here, kind of from what I'm hearing, being told, following that unofficial visit. He's eyeing a summer decision, and he's going to be going out to Colorado for an official visit with the Buffs with Coach Prime on April 22nd. But Oregon's doing a really good job in this recruitment. They've been doing a great job recruiting wide receivers. And he was talking, even when I saw him at the UA Next camp, he was talking about how he's just really excited about the vision that Will Stein has for him. Multiple 1,000-yard receivers, guy who wants to take the top off the defense and get his best players the ball, right? Remember, Coach Stein was saying in his first press conference, it kind of ruffled some feathers. You can let me know how you guys feel about it. He was saying that, it's plays are kind of overrated. It's about getting your best player the ball as many times as possible. And I guarantee that that's resonating with a guy like Aaron Butler. You can see him on the tape here. he's just a different kind of twitch. He really is. He's got, elite route running. He's really crafty. He's strong. He gives you additional value in the return game as well. But that was the point that I was trying to say. When he was talking about the conversations that he's having with Will Stein, he was saying, Butler was, that these were some of the best conversations he's ever had with a coach. And this was before the two even met. So now it seems like Oregon has a ton of momentum here in his recruitment, and for good reason. He was saying they got to be able to not guard me. They got to be able to not guard Jerion Dickey. They got to not be able to guard Ryan Pelham, a big-time SoCal wide receiver from Long Beach Millikan, who's in Eugene right now, or at least he was this week. And they have to not be able to guard Jordan Anderson, who's another commit for Oregon in the 2024 class. So I think that good players want to play with good players. That's kind of what happens with recruiting, right? So Oregon's wide receiver recruiting could hit a whole new level here in 2024, right? You already have Tyseer Denmark and Jordan Anderson committed. We still have to see what's going to happen with Gary Bryant. I think he's someone to keep an eye on for Oregon in the 2023 class. USC wide receiver out of the portal. Oregon's looking like they're in an awesome spot there with Gary Bryant, who's also out of the Southern California area, Corona Centennial. But to talk more about Aaron Butler and kind of wrap that one up a little bit, Chad Simmons of On3 placed a prediction for Oregon to land Aaron Butler. This is just coming off of that visit to Oregon. It is worth noting that he did log that prediction with just 50% on the confidence meter. So, not one that is, a home run or anything, or a high confidence pick. But, when I wrote about this story earlier today, I was kind of giving my thoughts on the prediction, and I'm trying to tell you that, I think that it's legit. The buzz behind Aaron Butler in Oregon, that prediction had previously been on Georgia for the Bulldogs to land Aaron Butler. And those are two other predictions that the Bulldogs had in their favor. Steve Wiltfong of 247, Greg Biggins, the SoCal guy of 247. They both still have their predictions on Georgia. So, I try to get as much scoop as I can, but I also got to keep an eye on what some of the industry experts say. I know that there's guys that are more plugged in than I am. I'm just trying to do my best out here. So Aaron Butler, he's a dude, and he's someone that you got to watch for Oregon in this 2024 class because he's elite, top 75 guy, top 5 prospect in California. I believe at least top 10, but he's just a big play waiting to happen. And, he's a serious talent. So I'm going to see if I can get an interview with him. But I know that Oregon visit definitely had to go well for him. All right, let's talk about someone else here. I think I already have their highlights. We got to talk about another wide receiver here in the 2024 recruiting class. We're talking about Dylan Gresham out of San Jacinto High School. I think that's how you say his name, or that's how you say the school's name. So 2024 wide receiver Dylan Gresham out of San Jacinto High School, out here in Southern California, about an hour and a half away from me. He picked up a crystal ball prediction to Oregon from Steve Wiltfong. And I actually just got off the phone with Dylan Gresham before this podcast, so that's why I was a little bit late on the live stream. But he just visited Oregon, and the Ducks made a really, really good impression. It wasn't his first time in Eugene. This was his second trip to Eugene, and the Ducks put themselves in a great spot. Junior Adams is leading the way here. He talked about how he was a really relatable coach. And, kind of just talking about how they want to get him involved. He was telling me that Adams was telling him that he could kind of see him moving all over the place, working at a couple different spots as a receiver. This guy is 6'1", 6 foot, about 180 pounds. And if you're watching the highlights here, you can see kind of like Butler, he's just a big play waiting to happen. He's not a super highly rated guy necessarily compared to some other targets. He's a 4-star recruit. 0.8900 on the 247 Sports Composite, but he's a really, really productive receiver. If you're just looking at some of his junior stats from the junior season, he had more than 2,000 all-purpose yards, 31 receiving touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So this is a guy that gives you some serious explosiveness and another big-time talent to watch for Oregon at wide receiver. And I think that, seeing this new, prediction, it kind of makes you wonder how many receivers Oregon maybe wants to take here in the 2024 recruiting class. I think that another notable update to pass along with Dylan Gresham is he's looking to decide in the next month or so. So you could be expecting a decision on his college of choice in the very near future here. He said he wants to take his official visits probably in June. And I know that he said Oregon is one of those schools that is going to get an official visit for him. So that kind of just gives you a good idea of where the Ducks are at in his recruitment. And they're looking really solid here. So I talked about how the Ducks are, they're going after a lot of receivers here in the 24 class, but I'm just kind of looking at some of these top rankings right now. You got the Ducks are in the running for Ryan Pelham. He has them as a top school. They're also in the running for Gatlin Bear out of Burley Senior High School in Idaho. They're also going after Xavier Jordan, although I feel like that one's trending more towards USC right now. Just looking at what else we got here. Jeremiah McClellan, he's another talent that we talked about out of the state of Missouri. And then another guy who was actually just on a visit to Oregon is James Madison out of St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida. The Ducks are in a good spot with him, and I think that they could receive an official visit from him. He just took his visit out to Eugene, second trip to Eugene under Dan Lanning as the head coach. So he's another guy to watch. But I think that wide receiver is probably a position that Oregon wants to hit pretty hard because this is the last season that they're going to have Troy Franklin. I wonder if Chris Hudson's going to come back for another year. He was 2020, 2021, 2022. So this could potentially be Chris Hudson's last year. And I think that room just saw a lot of movement, right, with the transfers. You had Dante Thornton, Isaiah Brevard, Seven McGee, Isaiah Crocker. So that's a room that's relatively thin on depth right now. They don't have Chase Cota from last year either. So it makes a lot of sense that Oregon's looking to take a lot of wide receivers here, and you want to have some really healthy competition in that wide receiver room. So Dylan Gresham is another major name to watch. I'll have a full update over on Ducks Digest, hopefully by tomorrow. I'm heading out of town for a camping trip this weekend. So, I'm hoping that no major news breaks, but with my luck, I know that something will. But those are kind of the main updates that I have, unless anybody has, has some questions that they want to throw in the live chat here before I get out of here. Now's the time to do that. But I think that this timing is working out really well in Oregon's favor. You want to have your heavy lifting done in the spring and summer months, as far as your next recruiting class, and that way you can kind of just focus on the on-field product and some of those really big time receivers or big time recruits rather that you want to add throughout the year, like your Josh Connerly's or your JT Tuamaloau. I know Oregon didn't get him, but he pushed his recruitment past the traditional deadlines, past those traditional timelines. So I think that the way that Oregon is kind of setting up their work here on the recruiting trail, if they do land Moga, I think that they put themselves in an awesome spot because we know how much quarterback commitments can mean, the weight that they can carry on the recruiting trail. We're still waiting to see if Dylan Raiola is going to make it out for the spring game. He's the number one player in the country, top quarterback in the country out of Pinnacle in Arizona. I'm told that there's no decision right now, one way or the other, on if he's going to make it out to Eugene. So we got to see what's going to happen there. But the Ducks are still trying to stay involved there. You got USC, Georgia, Nebraska, some other big-time programs there. And then with the quarterback position for Oregon in 2024, I think that you either take two high school quarterbacks or you take one high school quarterback and then you bring in somebody to maybe push Ty Thompson in that quarterback room, Austin Novosad in that quarterback room next season. The quarterback position is one that is growing increasingly tricky to analyze because it seems like it's really a year-to-year position. And that's why I think Oregon is poised to have such a good season this year, because even though you have a lot of guys, kind of moving around, you see some shakeup along that offensive line. I think you have a lot of really good pieces that are coming back. Stephen Jones, Jackson Powers Johnson, Josh Connerly are a couple guys that you got to mention, under Alik Terry. So, and I was just watching Malik Terry's media availability, his first media availability since joining Oregon, and it's hard not to get fired up after seeing that for Oregon, because this is a guy who said that, he's not lying. No, this is my dream school. It's my dream school coming out of high school, and then dream job. So I think that's going to be big time for Oregon as they look to take the next step with their offensive line. He said that Josh Connerly Jr. was the hardest worker in his room right now, and kind of said that he had feet like a defensive back. And, he's a guy who played high school basketball as well. So there's also some added versatility there for the Ducks with Josh Connerly. And then it looks like the center picture is going to be, between Jackson Powers Johnson and Marcus Harper, as the Ducks look to kind of figure out that position battle with Alex Forsyth moving on and, exhausting his college eligibility. So those are just a couple of updates from spring football. I'm trying to juggle covering the team and covering the recruiting trail. But my passion lies with recruiting, so I'm probably going to take that more often than not. So those are kind of the latest, notes and updates. Tionne Gray is going to be going to Oregon, and that's another big commitment for the Ducks here in 2024. Do me a favor. Like I said, take a second out of your day to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, family, and other Duck fans. And then lock in with me on social media. I'm at Torres Sports on Twitter, at Torres Sports on Instagram, and then we're here on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres. But I'm telling you, it's going to be a fun month for Oregon recruiting. So make sure that you guys stay locked into the Ducks Dish podcast, stay locked into DucksDigest.com, because we'll be covering all of it just as best as we can. That'll do it for this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to talk some Duck football with me, and we will see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.